In South Africa, xenophobia is often spoken about like it's a simple story, locals versus foreigners. But that explanation misses almost everything that actually matters. Because xenophobia is not just hatred, it's not just crime, it's a symptom of deeper pressure inside a society. Xenophobia means fear or hostility towards people from other countries. But in reality, what we see happening in South Africa at the present is more complex than fear alone. Crime is not nationality. Economic struggle is not hatred. And violence is a symptom, not a cause. If you only look at xenophobia as people hating others, then you miss the real question. And so to really understand the problem of xenophobia, we need to start where most explanations begin but rarely go deep enough. So one of the major claims out there is that South Africans deny most of these jobs because most employers want cheap labor. The factor of cheap labor as far as xenophobia is concerned in South Africa is partly true, but this claim becomes misleading when people use it to say South Africans are lazy or that immigrants are responsible for the high rate of unemployment in South Africa at the moment. In some parts of South Africa, especially in poor urban areas and townships, there are employers who prefer hiring migrants because migrants may accept low wages, long work hours, unsafe working conditions, fewer legal protections, and most times delayed payment. This happens in sectors like small retail shops, farming, construction, delivery service, restaurants, and many others. Some South Africans reject these jobs not because they are lazy or they hate work, but because the pay may be too low to survive on and work conditions may be exploitative, and sometimes these work conditions violate labor standards. Most times, if there is a job offering and the pay is too low to survive on, the pay can barely cover transportation and other living expenses, most South African locals will reject the job, and the desperate migrant who might have a family back home he's supporting or he has fewer legal protections in South Africa might accept the job. This is how the tension builds up. So employers chase cheap labor to cut costs, and the South African locals start feeling undercut, and then migrants become scapegoats even though employers are the ones driving the system. But there's the other side to this. Most employers say they prefer hiring migrants because migrants are easier to manage. They are less likely to join strikes. Migrants easily work flexible hours and they are perceived to be punctual. But whether these perceptions are fair or not, they influence hiring decisions. So the deeper issue here is that South Africa has high unemployment, inequality, and frustration. So when jobs become scarce, the competition becomes emotional and political. So instead of going after exploitative employers, the anger is often redirected towards foreign immigrants. So they claim that South Africans refuse jobs because most employers chase after cheap labor contains an economic factor, but it oversimplifies a much larger problem involving poverty, labor exploitation, inequality, immigration pressure, and historical issues left from the apartheid era economic structures. Not every South African refuses low-paying jobs, and not every employer is exploitative. But the cheap labor issue is part of the tension. Now, picture this. A shop owner needs one cashier, and then there are two applicants. One is a South African and one is an immigrant. Now the South African applicant says, I need proper pay and I can only work legal hours. I need transport money and I want 1 day off weekly. Now the migrant applying for the same job will say, I will work longer hours. You can pay me less. I can even sleep in the shop basement. No paperwork needed. Why would the migrants choose such work conditions? Probably 1, because they are desperate. 2, they might have a family back home whom they are supporting. 3, they fear being deported. So employers chase cheap labor to cut costs, and the South African locals start feeling undercut. The South African locals start feeling foreigners are taking away our jobs, but in the employer's mind, he is minimizing loss and maximizing profit. So this is the tragic cycle. This is how it builds up. 1, the employer wants cheap labor. 2, desperate immigrants accept harsh working conditions. 3, the South African locals now start feeling replaced by the foreigners. And then 4, the resentment starts growing. 5, the xenophobic rhetoric spreads. 6, the violence starts to erupt, and these employers continue to benefit. So when talking about xenophobia or Afrophobia that is ongoing presently in South Africa, cheap labor is one important factor, but it is not the sole cause of unemployment in South Africa. There are many other factors involved in the economic frustration South Africans are feeling. So what do you think about this? Let me know your opinion in the comment section.